Jimmy Johnson, one of the all-time great coaches. Only 6 coaches have ever won consecutive Super Bowls. Hall of Famer as he well should have been. You saw the reaction when he made the Hall and how emotional we got at Fox. It's great seeing him. You know, he takes a fishing day off when he comes on the show. So he is sacrificing for the herd, and you know I appreciate that, Coach, because you'd be out looking at aqua water, pulling in some 29-pound fish, and I apologize for that.
I love being on with you, Colin.
Okay, let's start with the Cowboys. Listen, Jimmy, you're watching them. You're objective on this. That defense, that is a handful, is it not?
It's as good as I've seen in a long time, and they really play to their offense. I think with McCarthy calling plays now, he understands how good that defense is. And so if they just won't turn it over offensively, and if they're efficient offensively, run the football, have some balance, take advantage of field position, that defense can win a lot of games and maybe win every game. Colin, I think there's probably 3 or 4 teams just as talented in the league, but I don't see anybody playing any better on Sunday than the Cowboys.
You know, Jimmy, this is interesting what you said, and I heard this years ago, is that from the New England camp, that Belichick is coaching to win the game, a head coach is. Sometimes a young coordinator, he's just trying to score points. He doesn't see the big picture. You made a point here. Kellen Moore's excellent. But Mike holistically saw this roster and said, hey, we gotta just avoid turnovers, right? You sense that, right?
Exactly right. You know, I actually talked to Dan Quinn after Atlanta lost that Super Bowl, and I said, Dan, you know, I understand that you don't want to get on to your coordinators, you know, but the head coach's job is to win the game. You know, when you look at the coordinators, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, they've got their mind in just a tunnel. The offensive coordinator's trying to score at all times.
Yeah.
You know, the defensive guy's trying to stop them, you know, regardless, blitz them, do whatever. You know, at times throughout the game, you've got to tell your offensive coordinator, hey, slow it down just a little bit. You know, I don't want to give them any time on the clock before the half. Let's run the football, even if we have to take a field goal.
Yeah.
You know, or you tell your defensive coach, hey, I don't want to blitz them now. You know, hey, let them work it down the field. We'll blitz them when they get close to the goal line. And so you've got to control the momentum of the game. And I think that's what McCarthy's doing right now. He understands how good that defense is.
You know the Miami Dolphins very well. You live down in the Keys, so you see all the reports on it. I got to tell you something. Mike McDaniel, I didn't know how it would work. He's quirky. He's totally different. But I watched that offense, Jimmy. They run motion. Their adaptability, it's a lot. And what do you make of just you know Vic Fangio can coach. You've known that for years. McDaniels what do you make of that offense?
Well, McDaniels, he understands what he's got offensively. He's got a quarterback that has a very good touch on the football. He doesn't have a rocket arm, but he's got a great touch. He's got a great feel for the offense, and he's got more speed on that offensive team than anybody in the league.
Right.
So he's utilizing that speed. And, you know, he doesn't let those receivers with Waddle and Tyreek Hill, he doesn't let them sit in one spot. He puts them in motion.
Yes.
He shifts them. He doesn't let the defensive guy jam them at the line of scrimmage. They never get a shot at them. You know, they're always on the move. And so he's got them open on all those crossing routes. Or if you're going to try to play one-on-one, he's going to take it down the field on a deep route. And Tua's got the great touch for the deep ball.
You know, listen, I was wrong on this. It's really, here's the problem. When Russell Wilson was in Seattle, Jimmy, you remember this, he was a really good fourth quarter quarterback. He would do the magic. And a lot of it was off the cuff. He'd roll out left, rainbow throws. It's the opposite in Denver. He's tremendous on script. But would you be concerned that once the second half arrives, Jimmy, it regresses badly? Tell me what's happening.
Well, for one thing, I think you fell into a trap there for a few years in that everybody talked about how he was the best deep ball thrower in the league.
Yeah.
Well, he was trying to make the big play on everything, starting to run around, starting to buy time, trying to be impromptu, and it got him in trouble. And that's why he takes so many sacks. And so he doesn't have the talent around him right now. He is not as talented or as efficient as what he was in those early years. And he's getting himself in trouble.
Jimmy, you had a lot of quarterbacks, college or pro, and you told me this. I remember years ago you said you didn't know what leadership was, but Troy Aikman had it, and you spotted it. And even in his bad years, you knew you had it. And I watched Justin Fields, and I've seen this with Zach Wilson, but we sort of know the verdict's out on Zach. I don't know what this is, Jimmy, but Zach and Justin don't see the field terribly well. And I watch him, and I think, somebody that athletic can't get sacked that much. What is it? I see it with Zach. I see it with Justin. Arm, mobility. And they just, I don't know what's going on.
There's two things. I think the number one thing is the quarterback's got to be a great decision maker. And if they don't make good decisions, I don't think you ever correct that. The other thing, they've got to be an accurate thrower.
Yeah.
And if they're not accurate, I don't know that you ever correct that. You might improve it a little bit by simplifying the offense, et cetera. But he's got to be an accurate thrower. As far as his speed and all this stuff, his quickness, his arm strength, hey, that's down the line. Decision maker, number one, and an accurate thrower, number two.
Dave Wanstead, our friend, used to always say, you can lose 2 games in a row. You lose a third, you can lose a locker room. And all those players with the Chargers, Jimmy, they know Justin Herbert's good. They know Keenan Allen's good. The players know who can play. They're 0-2. Would you be concerned if you were the owner, GM of the Chargers? You go to Minnesota and lose, Jimmy. Do you lose the locker room?
Well, Colin, Dean Spanos and I are pretty close. He's a close friend, and I feel horrible for him. I talked to him some during the off season, that going all the way back to the Jacksonville game. And now they get that kind of start. This is a talented football team.
Yes.
And they've got a talented quarterback. And it just seems like every decision they make, they had got in trouble a year ago or 2 years ago, going for it on fourth down all the time. And then, they end up blowing the game against Jacksonville. And now the other day, he kicks it on fourth down rather than going for it. Yeah. And then that backfires. And so it just seems like the decisions they're making are not the right ones. And then defensively, they're horrendous, and that's got to be improved. They got to correct that if they got any kind of chance at all of pulling this out.
So I got to ask you about this. You went from college to the pros, and it worked. And one of the reasons it worked, you told me, was there we go. Is that a
Terry Bradshaw?
Bradshaw gets in the way of everything, doesn't he? Okay.
Yeah, TV. Call me back later.
Terry, we got 2.5 minutes. Can you hold off? Why don't you watch the show? You'd know he's on. So you went college to pro, and very few guys have succeeded. But you had told me years ago that when you were in college, you were going to this pro stuff. You had your eye on the NFL. You were going to meetings and talking with coaches. So Deion Sanders, I'm going to ask you a 2-part question. That'll be the second part. The first part is that post-game handshake. What did you make of that?
Well, of course, Deion, he's going to put on a show, whatever he's doing. Deion understands that he is the sizzle. He's the publicity. He's got to bring in the recruits. That's what he's done. He brought in, 80-something players, and he brought in some great talent. Some of the players, the best player in the country coming out of high school. And that's what's winning games for him. And he's got an outstanding staff, and that staff they're coaching extremely well. So I love what Deion's doing. But I got to tell you about a post-game handshake. We were playing the Jets in '93. We were up 28-7. And so they're trying to throw the football, Boomer Esiason. So I blitz him a couple of times and turn him for a flip, back and forth, Charles Haley and all those pass rushers. And so we win the game 28-7. So I went to shake old Bruce Coslet, the head coach's hand at the end of the game, and he just starts cussing me. You sorry, He said, you're trying to get my quarterback killed. And I said, Bruce, were you trying to score? I said, you're trying to score, so I'm going to stop you. If you don't want your quarterback hit, if you don't want Boomer Assassin hit, tell him to take a knee. And so that was the end of that relationship.
Well, I was going to say, apparently Dion and Coach Norvell, they had some words. I will say this, right, is that Dion, I mean, the NFL thing's interesting, Jimmy, because there's so many factors. Yeah. Most players do not become great players don't become great coaches. Is there something that Dion has, a magic maybe that would work?
I think if he hired a great staff,
yeah,
I think he's an outstanding motivator. He's an outstanding communicator. I think he would have a shot. Now, there's no transfer portal. There's no NIL. So he's not going to be able to improve the talent right away like he did at Colorado. But as far as being a leader and being a motivator, as long as he had an outstanding coaching staff, I think he could be successful.
Yeah. So finally, I don't know how many. I'm surprised Denver hasn't clicked yet this season. I think the Rams are much better than I thought. Is there any story out there you look at, and Jimmy, all your years of football, college and pro, you're a little surprised by it?
I'm surprised Cincinnati's 0-2 and playing the way they have played. I think a lot of it had to be Joe Burrow, not working in the preseason, in the offseason, being somewhat injured. That's been a little bit of a surprise and a disappointment. But other than that, hey, the good teams are playing pretty good. It's still early in the season, though, Colin. The only 2 games, we went 0-2 and we won the Super Bowl. Michael Strahan's New York team went 0-2 and won the Super Bowl. So it can be turned around. And then by the same token, there's some 2-0 teams right now that we know they're not going to make the playoffs. So it's still pretty early.
All right, Jimmy Johnson, the Hall of Famer. It's great seeing you, Coach, as always. Say hi to Terry. You can call Terry Bradshaw back now.
All right, Colin, good talking with you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.